Welcome back. We are at the EY Entrepreneurship Awards. We have with us a battery of corporate stars who are raining down in Delhi despite clear skies. Joining me right now is none other than Mr. Ravi Uppal himself. So glad you could join us. I'm so sorry I took you away from your meeting there. Just a quick word, sir. Firstly, we're talking about just a lot of macroeconomic issues here.
Yeah.
We are seeing a lot of movement in terms of political developments. Just a sense that you are getting from the cues that you see. Are you watching the elections very carefully? What are the cues that you're watching for? We see a lot of changes down south. We're seeing a lot of changes in UP itself. It's a cliffhanger. Just a word on you on that. Your thoughts?
Well, I think there are obviously a lot of political changes, but I think the Indian economic system is gradually getting more mature and is going to get itself insulated against the political changes. I think the country is moving in a certain direction where you have certain needs in terms of performance on the economic front. So no matter which party comes, I think they have to follow the inertia of the system. So I don't think it's going to make so much of changes because the needs of the country remain the same no matter which party comes.
I just had a word about 5 minutes back with Mr. Kapadia. He was very confident about the GST and the 1st of July. Given the political changes that we do have, he was quite optimistic. What is your sense on the subject?
I think GST is one thing where across the party lines, everybody feels the need of implementing it. I think for once we see there's a great consensus. There could be a small difference of opinions on minor issues. I think those can be ironed out. I'm rather optimistic that given the way things are moving so far, GST should be rolled out by July 1st.
Absolutely. That's the second optimistic voice that we have this evening with us. Another word this time, sir, a little more specific with the space that you play in, which is, of course, the steel space. Divestment, that's been one key area that we are following very carefully. There's been a lot of talk on that, at least from the government side. Just a sense that you are getting, as far as the road forward is concerned, any particular areas that you're looking at or certain assets that you're currently looking at that you're eyeing with respect to the disinvestment cycle?
Well, the government obviously has announced its plan for divestment. I tell you, given the state our company is in at this moment, we are more in consolidation. Steel industry has gone through a very, sort of big pressure test. Right now, our immediate priority is to make sure that we improve upon our own performance, turn around in a big way, and can create a launch pad for future.
Fair enough. Just final words, sir. This one with respect to, of course, the broader picture that you are seeing in the coming few quarters with respect to the demand that's currently available. There's been a huge amount of competition from overseas. That is, of course, something that I'm sure that you are factoring in. But looking beyond that, how is the demand situation looking as of now?
Well, I think the demand is gradually looking up. I would say this year, the primary producer, they're going to increase their production by about 10%, which is a very positive sign. I'm personally optimistic. Now that the government has announced a huge budgetary proposal for investment in infrastructure, rail, housing, etc., I think that's going to augur well for the steel industry across the board. And Indian industry are also very aggressive right now in exports. So therefore, a lot of the growth has also come not only from domestic pitch, but also from exports. And we want to maintain that tempo.
Fair enough. That was, of course, Mr. Ravi Uppal. Interestingly, the second optimistic voice that we have tonight with respect to the GST, he's quite sure that 1st July is not something that's too ambitious. 1st July, given the political contours involved, can in fact be achieved, and that the political changes that we are seeing are just going to be another blip, another aberration, and will not affect the broader discourse with respect to the GST. So another key second optimistic voice coming in with respect to GST. Ron, I believe you have another guest with you.
I indeed do, Ashmit. Thanks very much. With me is Mr. Vipin Sondhi from JCB. He's the CEO of the company. We were getting one perspective from the infrastructure space, power and steel. You give us your perspective as far as roads and highways are concerned. Because there's been a lot of push, a lot of focus on the roads and highway project. Are we seeing signs of an uptick?
Roads and highways actually drove growth all of 2016 calendar year. And we can see that movement even in the first quarter which is quarter 4 of the fiscal or first quarter of this calendar year. What's important is that in addition to roads and highways, irrigation, railways, and at some stage real estate must start coming into the infrastructure equation for growth in infrastructure to be sustainable.
Because I remember you were with me on the day of the budget, and we were having a discussion then. And the key question that everybody was wondering: will the budget revive the animal spirits? In the sense that will the private sector now also be incentivized to make that kind of the big investments? Because still they account for 80% of the total investments that come into the country. Are you seeing signs of that? Because in your sector, a lot of PPP is required, for instance.
Yeah, I think that has still to come in. And what's happened is that public spending in the last 2.5 years has actually driven infrastructure growth. And you're absolutely right, PPPs need to come in. And this model is to do with dispute resolution mechanisms. I think since the government has presented a very responsible budget, private sector will come in. We just have to make it easy to ensure that there's equity of sustainability of private investment. So I think that's critical. It will come in. We just have to make sure that PPP programs are resolved very quickly as far as disputes are concerned.
But Vipin, have they been able to address the issue and in terms of, like dispute settlements and all that, which was a big issue as far as the roads and highway sectors were concerned, in terms of awards, which have gone wrong. Have those issues been sort of settled as of now?
Not adequately, and I think that also relates to what we are doing on the twin balance sheet issue, which is NPAs on the one hand, as well, and bank NPAs on one hand, and corporate lending or ability to absorb credit on the other. I think that has to be addressed as well. And there have been solutions of a bad bank, etc., being set up, but not much has happened in that direction. I think that's critical to move forward.
Vipin, thank you very much. Won't hold you up anymore. Thank you very much for speaking with us and wish you have a great evening, Vipin. Always a pleasure to speak with you. That was Vipin Sondhi with me. Well, that brings us to the end of this sort of special broadcast here on CNBC TV 18, the 18th EY Entrepreneur of the Year Award. Remember, the winner, of course, will be representing India in Monte Carlo later this year. That's all from me, from Ashmit and myself. Thanks very much for watching this special broadcast. Until next time, goodbye.